Hey, it's Adrian here. So my last video was a quick hit and run on some help to deal with your breathing if you hold your breath. I just thought could do with a bit of a longer video explaining some of it a bit more. So I'm sure you've all found yourself at some point holding your breath in general when you're playing. And it's usually a sign that obviously you're tense, but especially when you come up to that difficult passage. It's like, here it comes. Now, as I said in the previous video, the usual advice is simply to relax, which isn't useful because how do you just relax? And you need something more tangible. And my advice was these long out breaths. And I thought I'd give you a little more insight as to why that's helpful. So, when you're not breathing, it's just a sign you're generally tense. And one of the things the long out breath does is it encourages your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. Quite pleased I managed to say that without tripping over myself. Basically, your parasympathetic nervous system is your restive state, your resting state, when you're nice and quiet. Now, if you want to gear yourself up for activity, you take big in-breaths, get lots of oxygen, and that gets you ready for activity. And conversely, long out-breaths calm the nervous system down. So those long out-breaths are a really useful way of basically obtaining relaxation. And it gets the ribcage moving nicely. One of the interesting things about the diaphragm, which pulls down to create volume within the chest cavity to bring air in, is that it's not used on the out-breath. So it's a muscle like any other muscle that can stay tense if we're a bit stressed, and it stays tense by pulling down a bit. So the long out breath really encourages the diaphragm to release back up. And by learning to disassociate your breathing patterns with your playing, you can avoid that tension holding pattern of your breath as you play. So if you take a long out breath and then let it back in and long out breath again, you're purposely breaking the cycle. So if I'll just play a scale for its own sake, and you don't have to be as obvious about this as I'm about to do it, it's just so it's obvious on camera. So I will blow out through my mouth quite obviously, and then I'll let the breath come back in through my nose. So when I close my mouth, you know I'm letting the air come back in. And actually just before I let the air come back in, I'm going to pause for a second. Because at the end of the breath, it actually takes quite a lot of tension and effort to keep the air out. And I want you to feel that tension and then let go, just release tension. And you'll find the ribcage will ping back out and air will get brought back in. So I'm just going to play a scale up and down and I'll blow out. You get the idea. I'm used to doing this, so I have quite a long out breath. One of the other things to say is, once you have let go of the out breath and an in breath is coming back in, let the breath turn itself around. So air will come back in, you'll find yourself breathing in, and at some point you don't have to do anything, it's just the nature of the breathing mechanism. The in breath will turn itself into an out breath. And once it's already turned itself around, and you're naturally breathing out, then extend into the long out breath. Now you don't want to hyperventilate, so you don't want to do it too often. So you can do it maybe 5-6 times like that, and then come away from it, just be aware of your breathing. But it's a nice way of resetting the breathing. You'll actually find, once you've done that a few times, you'll find yourself breathing with less interference for a while anyway. So you can just forget it for a few minutes and then come back to it. And specifically, if you know there's a passage that you really struggle with, and it's the bit where you start gear up to try hard, and then because you're trying so hard, it becomes harder to do and the tension builds up. At that moment, a few beats before the hard part, start a long out breath. So you then start the hard part already having a nice long out breath. All right, see how that goes. Give it a go. Report back to me. I'd love to hear. So give this exercise a try, and I'd love to hear back from you. All right, bye.